Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is Voice of the Global South, your weekly guide to what's happening in Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, Asia and Oceania. All right then, on the show this week, meet the new phase of terror in Syria. In less than a week, Abu Muhammad al-Golani and his fighters have captured more cities from President Bashar al-Assad's forces than they ever did since the start of a civil war in 2011. Trump threatens to slap tariffs on the BRICS countries if they dump the dollar. Know all about the invisibility cloak, a technological marvel that can make you disappear just like Harry Potter. Nicaragua's President Daniel Ortega promotes his wife as co-president. And India develops wonder drugs to beat superbugs. All that and much, much more coming up on Voice of the Global South. On 27 December, rebels in Syria launched a lightning offensive on President Bashar al-Assad's forces. By the 29th, they captured the city of Aleppo and Hama a week later. The Islamist rebels, led by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham terrorist group, were closing in on Homs, Syria's third largest city, which is located less than 200 kilometers from the capital, Damascus. Should the rebels capture Homs, it would cut Damascus from the Mediterranean coast, which is a key bastion of the Assad clan. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham's leader posted a video message after his fighters seized Hama. He used his real name, Ahmad al-Shara, not his many pseudonyms. Al-Shara is also known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani or Abu Muhammad al-Golani, a reference to his family's origins in Syria's Golan Heights. So, who is Abu Muhammad al-Golani? Well, he was born in the late 1970s or early 1980s. His grandfather was displaced from the Golan Heights when the Israeli army entered the area. Israel seized the Golan Heights from Syria in 1967 and annexed it afterwards in a move that's not been recognized by the international community. Al-Golani left for Iraq in 2003 to fight against US occupation. Before founding the Al-Nusra Front, Al-Golani had fought for Al-Qaeda in Iraq, where he spent 5 years in prison. He returned to Syria when a civil war broke out in 2011. The US designated al-Golani as a terrorist in 2013. In 2016, he announced that his group had cut its ties with the Al-Qaeda. And the following year, Al-Nusra was dissolved and replaced by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Today, Al-Golani is Syria's most recognizable insurgent, rebranding his group and emerging as a de facto ruler of rebel-held northwestern Syria. He cemented his grip on Idlib, establishing a civil administration there called the Syrian Salvation Government. Al-Golani and the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham have sought to moderate the image, but they face a challenge convincing Western governments that they've fully renounced hardline jihad. Now, Joshua Landis from the University of Oklahoma in the US says Al-Golani has been smarter than Assad. Landis says he's retooled, he's refashioned, made new allies and come out with his charm offensive towards minorities. But Aaron Lund from the Swedish Defense Research Agency has a slightly more nuanced take on Al-Golani. He says it's PR. But the fact that Al-Golani and the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham have issued statements about protecting minorities in Syria shows that they are no longer as rigid as they once were. Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State would have never done something similar. Now, al-Golani timed his offensive on Aleppo to perfection. He launched it to coincide with the ceasefire coming into force between Israel and Hezbollah in neighboring Lebanon. Also, get this, Syria's main backer, Russia, is preoccupied in Ukraine. Iran's influence in the region has diminished after Israel defeated Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Hezbollah, which had fought alongside Assad's men against the rebels and helped him recover Aleppo in 2016, has weakened, and its leader Hassan Nasrallah is dead. So the regional power balance has shaken. Now, Reuters news agency cites the head of Syria's main opposition abroad as saying that the rebels began preparations to seize Aleppo a year ago, but the operation was delayed by the Gaza war. So, did anyone see it coming? Well, Turkey claims it did. Turkey, which is allied with some of the Syrian rebels and has bases inside Syria, had heard of the plans but claims it had no direct role in it. Clearly, the Syrian rebels had never had it so good. Until the last week of November, the civil war in Syria had mostly been dormant for years. The front lines had remained frozen since 2020. But a sudden advance by the rebels has reignited fears of renewed sectarian clashes. Why? Because President Assad and his supporters are followers of an offshoot of Shiite Islam called Alawites, in a minority in a Sunni-dominated Syria, which is threatened to be overrun by radical Sunni jihadist groups such as the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Now, I began this report with Abu Muhammad al-Golani. I'll end it with Bashar al-Assad. In October 2021, Newsweek put Assad on its cover. It read, "He's back in a triumph over the US. Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad is reclaiming a place on the world stage." It was not entirely wrong, since then many countries have sought to normalize their ties with Assad. Now take a look at another photograph. It shows four Arab leaders in the same frame. From left, Ben Ali of Tunisia, Ali Saleh of Yemen, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, and Hosni Mubarak of Egypt. All four were ousted in the wake of the 2011 Arab Spring, except Assad. The question is, will Bashar al-Assad survive the latest challenge to his 24-year hold on power? Is a regime change probable in Syria? For now, Assad's backers in Moscow and Tehran say they are standing by him. Watch this space. Now, US President Donald Trump has threatened to impose 100% tariffs on the BRICS countries if they challenge the dollar or undercut the US currency. Trump has already rattled world markets ahead of his second term with threats to levy an additional tariff on goods from China, Mexico, and Canada if they don't do more to stem the flow of illegal drugs and undocumented migrants. Ragini Sudhir Chaure reports.
America first. Drill, baby, drill. No welfare for illegal aliens. The United States President-elect Donald Trump has included it all in his Agenda 47. Wait, there is more to his list. Taking to social media, Trump threatened the BRICS nations not to create a new currency or support another currency that would replace the US dollar. The BRICS countries include Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. The message read a clear warning with Trump's obnoxious statement, "Go find another sucker." Or else he thundered in his social media post, quote, "They will face 100% tariffs and should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful US economy," unquote. He rounded off his post by saying, quote, "There is no chance that the BRICS will replace the US dollar in international trade, and any country that tries should wave goodbye to America," unquote. Trump's move followed a similar threat by him to impose 25% tariff on all products from Canada and Mexico entering the US, along with an additional 10% tax on goods from China. Tariffs are a central part of Trump's economic vision. He sees them as a way of growing the US economy, protecting jobs and raising tax revenue. A tariff is a domestic tax levied on goods as they enter the country, proportional to the value of the import. If you buy a product in India worth $1,400 with a 100% tariff, the product will be sold at double the price, that is $2,800 in the US. Trump has previously claimed that these taxes will cost another country, not the US citizen. However, economists say such an assertion is misleading. The charge is physically paid by the domestic company that imports the goods, not the foreign company that exports them. So in that sense, it is a straightforward tax paid by domestic US firms to the US government. A Republican Party lawmaker, Ted Cruz, called Trump's threat to impose tariffs as leverage. Already, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made an unscheduled trip to Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in the state of Florida to head off a potential 25% tariff on Canadian goods heading south. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, in turn, says that she plans to meet with Trump soon. Malaysia, on the other hand, says that Trump's idea to impose tariffs on BRICS countries could disrupt global semiconductor supply chains. Malaysia has applied for BRICS membership. Some, such as Scott Bessent, who is Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary, have suggested that the US President-elect's recent announcements are a negotiating tactic, meant more as an opening gambit than a promise. The primacy of the US dollar in international trade gives Washington, D.C. a number of advantages, including lower borrowing costs. For the US government, the ability to sustain larger fiscal deficits and exchange rate stability. Its stability means investors often flock to the dollar during uncertain times. The dollar also held the US wield considerable geopolitical influence, including the ability to impose sanctions on other nations and restrict their access to trade and capital. The IMF says that the dollar is the world's main reserve currency, representing nearly 60% of the world's foreign exchange reserves. Also, critical commodities such as oil and gold are still mostly bought and sold using dollars. The concept of de-dollarization refers to reduction in the use of the US dollar in world trade and financial transactions. Globally, new payment systems are allowing cross-border transactions without the involvement of US banks, which could undermine the dollar's clout. Leading politicians in Brazil and Russia have suggested creating a BRICS currency to reduce the US dollar's dominance in global trade. But differences within the BRICS grouping has slowed any progress on that front. However, BRICS countries have agreed to facilitate more trade in local currencies, cutting their reliance on the dollar. In October, Russia's President Vladimir Putin called for a new international payment system at a BRICS summit, saying that the dollar is being used as a weapon. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says that if the United States uses force to mandate the use of the dollar, it will likely further accelerate the shift to national currencies. More and more countries are starting to use national currencies for external trade and economic activities. This is a process gaining momentum globally. This is a process of erosion of the dollar's attractiveness. It is happening and gaining momentum. The 2024 BRICS summit hosted by Russia has Western-dominated payment systems. Russia has specifically pushed for the creation of a new payment system that would offer an alternative to the global bank messaging network SWIFT and allow Moscow to dodge Western sanctions and trade with partners. SWIFT stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It is a vast messaging network used by financial institutions to quickly, accurately, and securely send and receive information, including transferring funds across international borders. So will de-dollarization work for BRICS? The grouping does not have a common currency yet, but long-running discussions on the subject have gained some momentum after the West imposed sanctions on Russia over the war in Ukraine. However, India has made its stance very clear. India's Minister of External Affairs S. Jaishankar says that India is not actively targeting the dollar.
I think you have us confused for someone else here because we have never actively targeted the dollar. That's not part of either our economic policy or our political or our strategic policy. Some others may have.
Interestingly, the decision to prioritize the US dollar marks a policy shift from Trump's first term when he favored a weakening of the currency to boost US exports. With Ragini Sudhir Chaure, Sagnik Chakraborty for DD India.
Taking inspiration from Harry Potter movies, scientists in China may have finally created the cloak of invisibility that could make humans disappear just like that in plain sight. But while the innovation could revolutionize industry, its military applications raise concerns. Ayushi Ahuja reports on science fiction meeting reality.
What if we told you that your dream of possessing a superpower is no longer a fantasy? Are you excited? Well, you should be, because while we can't promise you the ability to fly or to travel back and forth in time, one elusive superpower is becoming a reality: invisibility. Yes, you heard it right. I'll say it again one more time. You can now have the power to become invisible when you want to. Science fiction is catching up with science. And the buzz is about an invisibility cloak, a technological marvel that can make you disappear just like Harry Potter's magical accessory. But wait, this isn't a mere magic trick. This cloak isn't about waving a magic wand. It's actually science. Scientists in China have developed a material so advanced that it alters its molecular structure to mimic its surroundings. Think of it as a human chameleon blending seamlessly into any environment. It's a camouflage elevated to superhero status. In nature, creatures such as an octopus or a chameleon use similar tricks to survive. But now, humans have cracked the code to join the club. No claws, no tentacles required. This technology is poised to revolutionize the industry, fashion that redefines blending in, architecture that adapts to its environment, and stealth tools that are straight out of a spy thriller. But before you start planning your superhero debut, here's the twist. This isn't just about cool gadgets or runaway trends. China's ambitions go far beyond invisibility in fashion. Developed by the National University of Defense Technology, this metamaterial can absorb electromagnetic waves and convert them into heat, reducing radar visibility. Now, a metamaterial is a structure that's designed to interact with electromagnetic waves in unique and unconventional ways. Metamaterials have long fascinated researchers. They've captured our imagination since 2006. That was the year when John Pendry, a physicist at the Imperial College London, introduced the concept of creating a Harry Potter-style invisibility cloak using specially engineered materials. In simpler terms, it's a game changer for stealth technology. Anti-stealth radars typically emit long wavelengths which are tough for conventional coatings to absorb. But this breakthrough could make China's stealth aircraft almost undetectable. What's the edge it provides in military strategy? Enormous. But it doesn't stop there. The innovation extends to non-stealth military jets such as the J-11 or the J-15 of China, which could soon become radar ghosts, literally. China calls this creation a chimera after the mythical creature that could morph and adapt to its surroundings. Fitting, isn't it? Over the years, China has tested invisibility tech on jets, vehicles, and even soldiers, building a formidable reputation in the field of metamaterials. With the most patents in this particular space, China isn't just leading the race, it's rewriting the playbook. But this is where the story takes a darker turn. Invisibility isn't just a superpower, it's a super weapon. While materials could revolutionize industry, its military applications raise concerns. Imagine a fighter jet, a tank, or a soldier becoming invisible to the naked eye and radars. The battlefield of the future could be one where the enemy is nowhere to be seen until it's too late. That said, China is not alone in this race. The US and Israel are developing their own stealth technologies. But for now, China is setting the bar. So where does that leave the human race? Is this the dawn of a new era of innovation, or is it the start of a new arms race? One thing's for sure, this isn't just about invisibility anymore. It's about visibility, of power, of ambition, and the lengths humanity will go to stay ahead. Because in a world where you can disappear, the real question isn't what would you do with invisibility? It is, what will they do when they can't see you coming? Ayushi Ahuja for DD India.
Ever heard of a co-president? I bet you haven't. But Nicaragua's just got one. President Daniel Ortega has promoted his wife from vice president to co-president, boosting the couple's joint control over the affairs of this Central American country. The next report tells you more.
The Central American country of Nicaragua is ruled by President Daniel Ortega, whose wife Rosario Murielo is the vice president. The couple have been married since 2005, and Ortega made his wife vice president in 2017. The constitutional reforms extend the presidential term from 5 years to 6 years, changes the roles of vice president and president to those of co-presidents, and grants the president more powers over the media. Nicaragua's parliament has also approved a law that seeks to nullify foreign sanctions issued against Ortega's wife, several of their children, and some 50 high-ranking government officials. The reforms give the co-presidents the power to coordinate all legislative, judicial, electoral, control, and supervisory bodies, regional and municipal, which were formerly independent under the Constitution. They mandate that the state will ensure that media is not subject to foreign interest and do not spread false news. The change also allows for stricter control over the church. A constitutional amendment stipulates that traitors to the homeland can be stripped of their citizenship, as the Ortega government has already done with hundreds of politicians, journalists, intellectuals, and activists, among others, perceived as critical. The revised constitution defines Nicaragua as a revolutionary and socialist state and includes the red and black flag of the ruling Sandinista National Liberation Front, a guerrilla group turned political party that overthrew a US-backed dictator in 1979 among its national symbols. Ortega has sent another reform to parliament to extend the terms of police and army chiefs to 6 years. It is scheduled to be voted in the coming days. The reforms which 79-year-old Ortega sent to parliament as a matter of urgency were unanimously approved by 91 lawmakers. The reforms must pass a second legislative vote on 10th January before becoming law. They are all but guaranteed to pass a second reading in January because the Nicaraguan parliament is dominated by the ruling Sandinista Front. The former guerrilla had first served as president from 1985 to 1990, returning to power in 2007. Nicaragua has jailed hundreds of opponents, real and perceived, since then. Ortega's government has targeted critics, shutting down more than 5,000 NGOs since 2018 mass protests, in which the UN estimates more than 300 people died. Thousands of Nicaraguans have fled into exile, and the regime is under the US and EU sanctions. The US and the EU, Switzerland and Canada have sanctioned some 50 top Nicaraguan officials, including Ortega's wife, some of his children, and police and army chiefs, accusing them of human rights violations during the repression of anti-government protests in 2018. Ortega cracked down on dissent over recent years. Most independent and opposition media now operate from abroad. Ortega and his wife accused the church, journalists, and NGOs of having supported an attempted coup d'etat as they described the 2018 protests. More than 200 political prisoners were freed early last year and expelled to the US, including 5 former presidential hopefuls who have been jailed after seeking to challenge the increasingly authoritarian Ortega in a 2021 election. Critics of the government say reforms legalize the absolute power already exercised for years by Ortega and his wife. The Organization of American States, a regional diplomatic body, says that through the reform, Ortega and his wife intend to increase their absolute control of the state and maintain their position in power.
India has developed its own wonder drugs to take on deadly superbugs. A number of promising locally developed new drugs show potential to combat antibiotic-resistant pathogens. As Ragini Sudhir Chore reports, these antibiotics can be a game changer for critically ill patients.
Antibiotics are medical superheroes. They've been saving human lives for decades. But now they're facing a formidable enemy, bacteria. Crafty as they are, bacteria evolve, adapt, and outsmart the very drugs that are designed to stop them. These so-called superbugs have become a global crisis, and the numbers are chilling. In 2021 alone, antibiotic-resistant infections caused 1.14 million deaths worldwide. Closer to home, India is one of the worst affected countries. In 2019, 300,000 deaths were linked to resistant infections. But here's some good news. Scientists in India are stepping up with groundbreaking solutions. A new drug, enmetazobactam, developed by Chennai-based Orchid Pharma, is making waves globally. It's the first Indian antimicrobial to receive approval from the US Food and Drug Administration. This injectable drug targets urinary tract infections, pneumonia, and bloodstream infections. Mumbai-based Wockhardt is testing another potential breakthrough, Zanuc. After 25 years of research, this new antibiotic is in phase 3 trials and could launch next year. Early results are promising. When administered to 30 critically ill patients on compassionate grounds, all survived. We all play a role in preserving antibiotics. Use them wisely and together. We can ensure these life-saving drugs remain effective for generations to come. Ragini Sudhir Chore for DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap on this week's edition of Voice of the Global South. The news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.